Hi guys, welcome to Diamonds and Discussions, where we unravel gripping true crime stories while immersing ourselves in the therapeutic world of diamond painting. I'm sorry, look, I'm still getting used to my intro. My notes are right here, but I didn't want to be like during my intro. Anyway, guys, this case is wild, okay? Where's my vape? Got it. Yeah, I do have my notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's why, because I don't have a lot of this memorized, obviously. The fact that this case even happened is literally like insane to me. It sounds like the plot to a movie, and that's mostly because it is based off of a movie, roughly. The kidnappers who did this did get their inspiration from the movie Dirty Harry. The mass kidnapping in Chowchilla, California. So imagine this, okay? It's July 15th, 1976, and it is the middle of summer. It is hot as all get out, like above 100 degrees. And during the summer, you've been kind of going to summer school. But, and I know you're like, what summer school? No, this summer school, like, I wish I could have went to this summer school if we're being like 100% like real right now. So at this summer school, they would swim at the local like recreational park. They would take the kids to like local parks or go on picnics or do crafts or all kinds of stuff like that. It's like, you know that quote, like, I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom. All right, this isn't a regular summer school, this is a cool summer school. Okay. Like literally the kids loved this summer school so much they made their own petition so they could have 2 more weeks of summer school. So if that gives you any idea of just how much fun these kids were having, and these kids were anywhere from ages like 4 to like 14, okay? Their bus driver was a man named Ed Ray, and Ed Ray was like a very loved man. He was kind of like everyone else in Chowchilla, and he liked to farm, and the community just adored him, and the children adored him just as much. And they're getting ready to leave the fairgrounds, which is where they happen to be during this day. A boy named Mike was getting on the bus that day. Now, he didn't normally ride the bus during summer school, but he got in trouble for sneaking around with a girl. So his mom's punishment was, sorry, but you got to ride the bus home tomorrow from summer school. So the bus was leaving, and they were going to leave Mike. So he had to run because, of course, he was still hanging out with a girl. I don't think Mike learned his lesson. Fortunately and unfortunately, he did make it onto the bus, which honestly, I guess if you listen to the story, it is more fortunate that he made it on the bus. So the bus is, of course, going about its business, dropping off kids, and they're on a bus. They went swimming earlier that day, so a lot of these kids are in their swimming trunks or their bathing suits or whatever, and they're being kids. They're running around on the bus, they're talking to each other, being rowdy, pulling each other's hair, like they're being kids. As they're dropping kids off, they're carrying about their normal route, and they pulled down this back road. This back road was like a single like dirt road. It looked like it was between like two like apple orchids, or what are those called? Two apple like fields, okay? Apple tree fields. As soon as they pull down it, they see a white van, and it's like kind of like caddied like diagonal in the middle of the road. Well, Ed, being Ed, and Chowchilla also being Chowchilla, Ed saw this white van, and he just assumed, like, oh, well, maybe they're broke down or have a flat or something like that. Let me see what I can do. As soon as Ed put the bus in park, 3 men jumped out of this van. The men had pantyhose over their faces, and they had sawed-off shotguns in their hands. They were pointing their guns at Ed and banging on the bus doors, like, let us on, open these doors, whatever, like trying to get onto the bus. In Ed's mind, they can get their money or whatever they're after. If I, work with them, maybe everything will be okay. Well, that's not what happened. Ed opened the door, and immediately upon opening the door, the first kidnapper points the gun at Ed and he says, "Go to the back of the bus." He also instructs the kids to move to the back of the bus. Well, a lot of the kids, or not a lot, but some of the kids at this time are kind of thinking they're being like punked. So one of the kids, he stands up and he says, "We didn't do it," like in a joking way, because he thinks that they're being punked, because things like this just don't happen there. And he quickly realized that it was not a joke. Kidnappers made the kids in the first 4 rows go to the back of the bus, and when they did that, until I reveal who the kidnappers are, I'm just going to call them Kidnapper F, Kidnapper J, and Kidnapper R. Kidnapper J jumps in the driver's seat of the bus. Kidnapper R jumps off the bus and goes and gets back in the white van. And then Kidnapper F sits in the front row of the bus, but he's facing the children with his gun. And the bus takes off. When I tell you that these kidnappers had a plan, they had a plan. They worked over a year on this perfect plan. If it wasn't for the children being so smart and just being so brave, they could have gotten away with this. They drive up to, the white van drives up to a green van. Kidnapper J gets out of the driver's seat, and Kidnapper F tells them, "I want you to separate into 2 groups on each side of the bus. Half of you on this side, half of you on this side." And so they do. We're going to pretend that this is the school bus. This is the front of the bus. This is the back of the bus. And this is the little swingy door, okay? And this is white van number 1. So the guy, Kidnapper J, who was driving Kidnapper R, who was driving the first white van, he takes it and he backs it up. He backs up the back of the van to the doors of the school bus. And there is a kidnapper on each side of the openings of the school buses in the back of the van. They are loading the kids one side of the bus at a time, making this side get into the back of one van. And you think that maybe they could run. Pretend you're getting off of the school bus. This is the steps, you're getting off of the school bus, and here's the doors. The van was parked right here. The back of it was open. They were being directed to get immediately into that van. And the space that was between the bus and the van on each side had a kidnapper on either side pointing a gun at the middle, which if you think about it, honestly, is not a good idea, because if one of the kids tried to get away, you're going to end up shooting each other. But anyway, so there's no way that these kids can run out in between these buses and in the van. So one by one, each child is getting on to the van. Immediately when you step into the van, you see that the inside of the back of the van is completely walled off with that, that in the 70s there was that wood. It looked like wood, but it wasn't. It was linoleum, flooring. Well, it was all over the van, top, bottom, sides, everywhere. Okay, so they could not see out and nobody could see in. Once they filled up both vans and they shut the doors, it was pitch black in there. Literally the only light that they could see was through the cracks of the van doors. That's the only light that they could see. If you remember, like I said, it was also over 100 degrees. There's obviously no AC back there, and these kids are literally cooking alive. There's no water back there. There's no food back there. So they are just dying. So they abandon the school bus and they take the white van and the green van and they start driving. The kidnappers do. They start driving. Around this same time, the parents are starting to wonder, like, it's like 4:15, 4:20. They got on the bus at about 4. My kid should be home. Like, what is going on? And so some of the parents are like, it's Ed. He probably had a flat tire or ran out of gas or they stopped for ice cream. Like they didn't think much of it. But around 4:45, the parents are starting to get really concerned. Like, okay, whatever they decided to do, or if they had some kind of mechanical, like car problems, they should have already been done with that, like well and done with that. Other parents are thinking the same thing as well. Like, what the heck? Where's my child? I mean, nowadays, I would have been calling within the first, 20 minutes, but it was a different time then, obviously. That's why, it took them a minute before they called in. But by, 5 or 5:30, the local sheriff's office was flooded with parents. These parents were going up there and calling and demanding, where is my kid? And all these parents, I mean, can you just imagine your child is not home when they're supposed to be home on the bus. You go up to the police station because the lines are so clogged up you can't even get a hold of anybody. You get there, parents everywhere freaking out, crying in the parking lot. Nobody knows where their kids are. I cannot imagine what that would have been like. Sheriff decides to put up some roadblocks. And of course, they immediately start getting other towns involved and helicopters, things like that. By the time that night rolls around, it is a media frenzy everywhere. People looking for this bus and these kids and everything. It was unfortunately just a little too late for those roadblocks. Those 2 vans had been way gone by this time. The kids said that it felt like they were in the back of those vans for, days. They had, because, they had no clocks, they had no watches, they had no way to even tell time. I mean, when you're in a situation like that, your concept of time is just completely, off, especially when you're going through, a traumatic event like that. You have basically no concept of time. The kidnappers drove these kids in these vans for 12 hours. That is unfathomable to me. They also end up driving about 110 miles away. They feel the bus come to a stop. The back doors of the van fly open. One by one, the kidnappers are reaching in, grabbing a child and pulling them out, shutting the doors. Grab a child, pull them out, shut the doors. Just child after child after child. When these kids got pulled out, they were obviously so disoriented because, number one, they had been back there for 12 hours with no food, no water, nothing. Number two, it was complete pitch black back there. So they couldn't see anything at all. When they get out, they can see that they are in a giant tent. And when they step out, the kidnappers ask them, what's your name? How old are you? I don't know why they asked for their ages and their names and all that. And I don't know. That was, I guess so maybe they could ransom each parent individually. I'm not really sure. After that, lead them over to this hole in the ground. When they looked down in this hole, there was a ladder that went straight down into the hole. And they instructed, of course, with shotguns, these children to get into this hole one at a time. That sounds honestly so terrifying. Just not knowing anything, where you are, how long it's been. You're probably covered in your pee. Not only your pee, like maybe your friend Susie's pee too, because you haven't had a bathroom break. And then you're instructed to get down in this hole. But I mean, luckily at the time, Ed was there, and so he was able to kind of like calm them down, I guess, and say, hey, it's okay, just come on down. Ed had a flashlight down in the hole, and Ed's like, come on down, it's fine, we're gonna be okay. So they get all the kids in the hole, and the kids are very upset. Back in Chowchilla at this time, parents are starting to wonder, like, how do a bus driver, 26 kids, and an entire bus just go missing, like literally wiped off the planet of the earth? They were even like, is it aliens? Are they on Mars? Like, literally, they had no idea how this just randomly disappears in the, like, a whole big ass yellow school bus. But by this time, they had found the school bus that the kidnappers abandoned.
Took your side against. The bus carrying the youngsters and driver from a summer school session at Dairyland Unified School was found empty in a bamboo-covered area of the dry Berenda Slough. There is no doubt the bus was deliberately hidden in the thicket, and dust on the seats indicated the 26 youngsters were not aboard when the bus was driven into the slough. The mysterious disappearance would also indicate that at least 2 people had to be involved, one to drive the bus into the slough and another to guard the youngsters. There were other vehicle tracks on top of the bus tire tracks in the sand. Many of the worried parents were waiting at roadside, while others kept an all-night vigil at the Chowchilla police station.
They found it. It was kind of like in this like bushy area. They had some weeds on it, whatever. Obviously, that is a devastating thing to find in a situation like that. Finding the bus with not a single child. I mean, no note, nothing. Back to these poor, sweet children. They're all in the hole. And the kidnapper takes what looks like a giant, like, manhole lid and covers up the hole, and they can start hearing the dirt, the like shh of the dirt being thrown on top of this hole, shovel after shovel. And like with every single shovel going on, their anxiety is just, I mean, through the roof. They're literally being buried alive. Down in this room where the children are, there are mattresses just strewn all over the floor. There are a couple pillows, a couple blankets, a couple things of crackers and peanut butter. They have like this makeshift toilet thing where they've like sawed out a hole in the top of it for them to use the bathroom in. Kids are obviously, of course, I mean, just terrified of what's going to happen. Ed Ray did his very best to try and keep these kids calm as much as he could, try to encourage them to take a nap, and of course was proving extremely difficult in the situation that they were in. This is actually a super important detail, because it was at this time that some of the children have reported having visions or hallucinations during this time even, which ends up, we'll just put a pin in that for now, and then I'll come back to why that's kind of relevant. After, a couple hours goes by, and Ed and Mike, which is the 14-year-old, start like kind of feeling along the walls of like this hole that they're in. Is it just a hole and there's just dirt everywhere, or like, they're trying to figure out what it is. Well, when they do, one of the 2x4s that's kind of like holding up whatever this like ceiling this is gets bumped, and they start hearing like the creaking of metal. This tarp that was that was on the ceiling that was full of sand, like just bottoms out and falls into their hole. Kids are screaming, of course, terrified. So now they have even less space because they can't go on this end of the trailer. The sand has fallen through. They're scared they're going to bump the 2x4 and then really end up caving the roof in. The kids start begging Ed Ray, like, you have to do something. Mike is there, but Mike's only 14. He's still a kid. Ed is the only adult that can really like do or even try anything. Ed is like, no, but if the kidnappers are up there, and he's acting like I mean, how really anyone would act. They're scared. He doesn't want to get shot. He doesn't want to get them all killed. Like, I can understand why Ed was scared. Eventually, Mike decides, if I'm going to fucking die, I'm going to die trying to get the hell out of this hole. They stack up all the mattresses, and Mike climbs up on top of these mattresses, and he is pushing on the manhole with everything that he has. Mike was a little cowboy, so he was like doing the lassoing. He was in like competitions, riding horses, like, doing like fucking rodeo shit. He had muscles. He was like baling fucking hay. He was a stout little boy. He gets up there and he tries to move the manhole, which Ed had tried. I'm not going to say he didn't. Ed Ray did try previously before that, but wasn't able to get it off. But eventually they were able to talk Ed into getting up there and trying to help Mike with the manhole cover. The kids start screaming, "It moved, it moved." Mike didn't feel like it moved, but once it shifted a little, Ed was able to hold it up enough that there was like a little crack in where the manhole was. Ed is holding it up. Mike takes his arm and he starts feeling on top of the manhole. This part is fucking nightmare fuel. If Ed would have slipped and dropped that pothole cover, it would have literally severed Mike's arm. Thank God that did not happen. So Mike is like feeling on top of this hole, and he feels there's 2 batteries on top of it, like 2 bus batteries. Bus battery is not like a car battery. A bus battery is like heavy, like 125 pounds, and there was 2 of them on top of this manhole. Mike gets them off, and when they move the manhole out of the way, they see that there is like a little room up there. So not like a full-size room. It's literally like maybe 3 feet high. And so there's a better diagram in the documentary, but I just drew this one up. And the little circle is the hole they went down, and the square is the room above. Like 3 feet long. So just enough to really cover the very top of this manhole. Mike is just not ready to give up yet. So he climbs up in that room. Other little boy climbs up there with him. They are taking turns like hitting the walls, kicking at the roof, and Mike is trying to push at the top of the ceiling because he's like crouched down. He's trying to like push with his back. Another kid is like laying on his back on the ground of like the room, and he's like trying to kick up with his feet while Mike is pushing. And I mean, nothing is budging. Mike is feeling so discouraged. Eventually, he takes this like piece, it's like a little chunk of like plywood or 2x4 or something, and he starts hitting it. Sand starts to break through the bottom. Mike starts digging. He's pulling this sand like out. He is pushing it back down into the hole where the kids are. The kids are scraping it off the mattresses, and they're just like doing this conveyor belt. He's scooping it out, pushing the sand down. They're scooping it off the mattresses like, okay, keep going until Mike can get his fingers like up under this like piece of plywood. Mike takes every little bit of bravery that he has left and every tiny ounce of energy that he has, and he grabs the plywood and he pulls as hard as he can. And when he does, a single ray of sunshine breaks through and shines right down into that hole. The kids start screaming and clapping. They are so excited. Just that rush of fresh air. But they have to keep it down because they don't know what's up there. Mike keeps on, tears it away, and he is able to kind of like peek out of the hole, a little, and he doesn't see anyone. And he gets out of the hole and he looks around, and he's in the middle of a rock quarry. They slowly start to come up one at a time. And Ed is afraid. Again, I would be afraid too. And he sees like the rock quarry, like, like the big, like tall, like things at a rock quarry. He sees those and he's like, maybe the kidnappers are up there. Like they could like snipe us or something. Like, you're not going to miss 26 kids in a row. You're just not. They're walking for a little bit, and they come up to this field, and this man comes down from this field. And when he does, they kind of step back. Is this man a kidnapper? And the man says, Hey, I know you. Yeah, you're that bus driver. And you're those kids. He was not an evil kidnapper. He called the police immediately, told him what he found, told him about the kids. The police took the kids to the local prison. They gave them an apple and a jug of milk, and they had on prison jumpsuits because their clothes were dirty and had pee on them and stunk. After they get done questioning the children, they put them on a bus and send them back to Chowchilla. And I mean, oh my gosh, I know I keep saying this, but golly, could you just imagine? Those videos and pictures are really just really heartfelt and really beautiful to see these families like reconnecting after this. And one thing that really pisses me off about this whole thing, and look, and it's not Ed's fault, okay? Mike should have got all the praise for saving those kids. I'm not gonna say that Ed was a scaredy cat, because guess what? I would have been at the back of the fucking bunker, okay? I would have been terrified too. So I don't blame Ed. I would not have nowhere near the amount of bravery that Mike showed. The kids are back home. That's great. And the police have to start investigating. So they go back to this hole in the ground where the kids were discovered. When they dug up the ground around this hole, there was an entire fucking caravan buried with a hole in the top for them to get in it. How the fuck do you get away with burying an entire caravan in the ground? Like, wow. They start asking the guys, at the rock quarry. Like, a lot of the guys are like, no, because of course a lot of them are just working during the day. So if any of this happened at night, they wouldn't have seen anything suspicious. But there was one guy, and he wrote down that there was a white van and a green van. I can't remember exactly what he said, but basically he said something like there was a white van, there was a green van, and it looked like Fred Woods, the new guy. He was over there. So immediately they're like, Fred Woods. We got to check into this guy. Fred was born on October 15th, 1951, making him a Libra. Fred lived with his parents. Technically not with his parents. They had like this garage that was kind of like, it wasn't connected to their house, but it was like kind of like in the back. And Fred had like a bunch of fucking junk cars. And there was a loft at the top of this like 2, 3, 4 car garage. And that's where Fred lived. Fred's parents were Fred Sr. and Harriet. And when I tell you they had money, okay? They had old money, what's considered old, like generational money. Like Fred's dad was rich. Fred's dad's dad was rich. Fred's dad's dad was rich. You get what I'm saying? They had generational wealth. Okay. They also lived in like a very, very wealthy suburban like area. Okay. And their house literally looks like a fucking castle. Like, it's insane. Fred was described as shy and awkward and kind of kept to himself. And he had a really hard time, like, making friends. Just an awkward little dude. And although Fred was not an only child, he was definitely a very lonely child. Fred did have a sister. Once it was discovered that Fred's sister had Down syndrome, they immediately put his sister up for adoption. Fred was always like seeking his dad's approval and just trying to impress his dad. But his dad was constantly talking down to him, really just ripping Fred a new asshole. Okay, I could really understand why that was kind of hard for Fred, because coming from like a super influential family like that, that's like high expectations. That's a lot to like live up to. So I could kind of see how that could be difficult. When Fred turned 19, he got married to his high school sweetheart. However, much like his job history, His marriage did not last very long before he ran back to mommy and daddy's money. And he was said to be very selfish in his marriage. Fred didn't work at all. He was living off his dad's paycheck that he would send him, like fucking disability or something. Would Fred use that money from his dad to, I don't know, pay bills or buy food or anything? No. He used it only for himself. Didn't buy his wife flowers, didn't do none of that. Nope. He bought old broken down cars with the money that he received from daddy every month. Not only that, but Fred's ex-wife said that he was just a weird fucking dude. I'm not talking like eat spaghetti with a spoon weird. I'm talking like Fred found a dead body on his property, and she said that he was thrilled to find this dead body. Like, she's never seen him happier than when he found this dead body. Like, that kind of fucking weird, okay? I'm weird, but not that kind of weird. They were divorced in less than a year, and honestly, like, good for you, girl. Like, get the hell out of there. After the divorce, Fred just went downhill. He just got bitter. He got depressed. He was like 20, 21 years old, and he was just a fucking grouchy dude. Not only did Fred not have good grades, and he couldn't hold down a job, and he couldn't keep a wife or really any friends at all, he just expected daddy to save him, and daddy did time and time again. So after the divorce, and after, you know, Fred was going through his like depression, his dad got him a job at the rock quarry, where he met Jim and Rick Schoenfeld. There was Jim Schoenfeld, who was the older brother, and then Rick Schoenfeld. They met there at the rock quarry, and just like Fred, Rick and Jim were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, as the expression goes. So they were not quite as well off as Fred's family was, because like I said, Fred had that like generational, like old money type wealth, when Jim and Rick had that like new money, like kind of rich. Like his parents were rich. They were raised in a very similar way. But when it came to the three of them and their friendship, Fred was seen as like the leader of the three of them. He was like kind of the mastermind behind everything that they did. One night, Fred and Jim and Rick were hanging out, and they were watching a movie called Dirty Harry. I don't know the entire like plot of the movie, but I do know that he like kidnaps a bus, or not kidnap, but like takes over a bus and ends up in a rock quarry. I don't know if he buries it at the rock quarry. I should look into that. But anyways, watching Dirty Harry, and Fred is like reading the paper, and he sees that the state of California has like a bunch of fucking money. Okay? A bunch of fucking money. And he's showing this to Jim and Rick. They're like, yeah, okay. So what, Fred? Like, what's your fucking point? And Fred's like, so my fucking point is, they don't need all of that money. What if we were to commit some kind of kidnapping and hold someone ransom, someone like of high standing, influential enough that they would pay us money to get that person back? Rick and Jim are like, okay, but who would we even fucking kidnap? Well, at this time, they're watching the movie. Children. What if we kidnapped a whole school bus full of fucking kids? And from that point on, the plan was born. Like I said earlier, the planning of the kidnapping, along with like putting the paneling on the vans, and also putting the paneling on the caravan, burying the caravan, doing all of this shit, like, took a good long while. And they did all of this within that year of planning. Here's why their plan didn't work. After They kidnapped the bus and the kids, and they got all that done. They went home. Jim, Rick, and Fred all went back to their own homes to act like nothing happened. Which is another thing I just don't understand. How do you commit a murder or a crime or a mass fucking kidnapping and just go home and be like, mother, this tastes fantastic. I love this little crumpet you made, mother. How do you do that? And act like nothing is going on, like everything is okay. But that's what they did. The next morning, he comes down, he's eating breakfast, and he hears the news. Beep, 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 beep. 26 kids and bus driver have been found. Fred is like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So before Fred and Rick and Jim or John Jingleheimer Schmidt, whatever, could even ask for the ransom money, the kids had already escaped and been brought home. Like, how just the timing is so fucking perfect on that. So yeah, that's basically the gist of the story. Fred Woods and Rick and Jim Schoenfeld end up getting life in prison, which actually turned out not to be life. Now they're all three out, and I gotta wrap up because I gotta go get my hubby from work here in a minute. The reason that I put a pin in that whole hallucination thing is because the only reason we are where we are in the study of childhood trauma is because of this case. And I think that is just fantastic. The reason the hallucinations tied into that is because there's these children hallucinating, like multiple children hallucinating about this event, was able to show that basically just the pure power of fear was enough to, like, these kids were so scared that they were going to die that they were able to hallucinate to comfort themselves. This is why that little girl, she had a hallucination that the kidnappers were sleeping on this hole. It is just intense. So please, if you decide to check out this documentary, let me know, and let me know what you think about it. Seriously, it has to be one of my favorite documentaries that I have watched since The Staircase. That was another one that I loved. That is it. That was a long one. I'm so sorry that was so long. I'm going to try to put this, it's probably going to be in separate parts on my TikTok. I'm going to try to put this up on my YouTube channel. I don't know if I'm going to start a YouTube and start uploading videos, but if I do, this will be my first one. I would like for you to leave some suggestions in the comments of what case you think that I should cover next and what you think about today's case. I mean, these kids were not actually physically harmed, as far as scratches or bruises, they might have had a few, but they considered mental harm, not physical harm. But is your brain not a part of your body? That's how I feel about it. But that's the end of today's case and today's video. There's a lot more details I wish I could have gotten into, but for real, please, if you do anything, check out this documentary. Thank you so much for watching Diamonds and Discussions. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know it was a wild ride. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay sparkling, stay diamond painting, and I look forward to our next video together.